publish things on a regular basis. It's like even getting stuff published on a regular basis is not easy. Like I need like a full on like team that actually, anyway. All right. Oh, well, I think that recorded.
I see it. Yes.
It's okay. Cause, oh, actually perfect. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Claudia.
We were just
Happy
talking
Friday.
about the joys of actually, the joys of having a regular social media calendar. So let's go ahead and pray right now, our kickoff prayer. Dear Father, thank you so much for this day with Shannon, and be with us as we have a conversation on courage. I titled this what courage feels like to me right now as a Christian, and also all the changes that are happening around me, in me, and also we want to talk about, it's Friday, so let's talk about Sabbath and the meaning of Sabbath, and how the energy we're going into the weekend with. And we just hope whoever this episode touches, please bless this episode. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Hey, friend.
Hello.
So we were just talking our 2 minutes prior to coming in on how our last few episodes was on, since Charlie Kirk's assassination. I feel called to share more on coming out more as a Christian, and really sharing more about my journey to being raised really not around any religion, and how how I became one around 35 years old, and which is 15 years ago, and how that actually is what informed and empowered all of my leadership work, my social impact work, my entrepreneurship all these years, but that also the discomforts of it all. We've been talking about automation and like needing structure to run your day-to-day life, to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel certainty, and to feel like we're enough in every moment. And yet when God calls you in a major event like this, major crashes happen or bombs go off in the world, there are just certain ones we got to pay attention to. And so, yeah, I've just been, for the last few weeks, since September 10th, which is when Charlie was assassinated, just his deep love for God, and also the revival we're seeing around the world, and really asking and being with God on how should I show up? How should I show up when probably majority of my friends have a spirit, are spiritual, but a lot of them are not traditional believers. And right now, one conversation I had with a dear friend, she said to me, Claudia, when you use the words Judeo-Christian or even Christianity, those words have been co-opted and represent the MAGA movement. It's MAGA to use those words, and how yet my entire work is whole self leadership, and the whole goal of this work is teaching us that the journey of life is to be fully and discover fully all of you, and to express and embody and fully experience that. And yet really coming out in my faith, and actually even mourning Charlie Kirk, the hate messages that I got, or the triggers that I set off in doing so, and text messages and voice memos from friends of mine from that I've known for 15, 20 years, whose lives I've impacted, and how it's a next level of courage. It's a next level of feeling uncomfortable.
It's interesting. I personally hadn't heard that there was this association today with Christianity so, I guess, tightly tied to MAGA. And it's interesting because when you talk about whole self leadership, there's multiple components to that wheel. It's not, I don't think it's one size fits all, whether it's your career, your family, your friends, your community, your faith, your health, your finances. All of those different elements in the wheel are different for everybody.
Yes. Well, and I think that is another piece that inspired this conversation was one of Charlie's mentors was Dennis Prager. And again, having been a liberal my whole life or non-religious majority of my life, I never had heard of him. And I said to John, because I've just been, consumed in a lot of the researching, right? More about Charlie and more about his faith. And Dennis Prager is an author. He created something called Prager University, and he's Jewish, but I believe a believer from what I read or understand. But he might have to fact check me on that. And he has a quote that says, "I am convinced courage is the rarest of all good traits. There are far more kind and honest people than there are courageous people. Unfortunately, however, in the battle against evil, all the good traits in the world amount to little when not accompanied by courage." And this was a quote in his book, The Rational Bible, Exodus. So it was so powerful because even, he talks about the Holocaust too, and how so much of our society, there's so much good in the world. And yet when societal events are happening and hate is spreading or danger or what feels unsafe happens, it's just easy to close the door on it. And how during the Holocaust, when Jews were, how many people hid the Jews in their basements? And as a result of silence and as a result of, okay, I'm a good and kind person, but I just want to keep my peace and I want to keep my family safe and I'm going to shut the door on you. We did have, and the lack of activism and the lack of courage during that time, over 6 million Jews were killed. And it's the largest genocide in the history of humanity. And we might need to fact check that. Also, a lot of fact checking here. But from what I understand, if not the largest genocide or one of the largest genocides in our history. And so, yeah, and I feel like, having been somebody who's been in the secular leadership space, right, who's taken my programs of She Summit, of my This Is How We Rise book, my talks, my programs to companies like PepsiCo, Morgan Stanley, Aflac, to Audi, to cross-sector, Bacardi, all across industry, Fortune 500 or Fortune brands, where you have to be super inclusive with language and you have to be super, where I was in that inclusion world of leadership. How do we use language where we're not really getting into religion or we're not getting into politics, we're not getting into certain topics, but we're keeping the language super safe and neutral, so yet still create cultures of community and cultures of equity and recognizing our unconscious bias and recognizing our blind spots. And having been in that work for so long with content and leadership trainings that were really powered by my experience of becoming a Christian, yet I was never a Christian leadership person. And so now it is this feeling of, okay, I really want to come out as a Christian. I really want to share more verses and more of what's powered me, which is my wholeness and a part of wholly who I am. And yet the losing of people, the cancellation of people, the opportunities, and I have lost opportunities since I spoke out for the Jewish people on acknowledging anti-Semitism since October 7th. I've lost contracts and corporate opportunities, and yet this feels like it's a next level because somehow it represents MAGA if I use some of these words. And I mourn Charlie Kirk's loss. So so that's the raw feeling these days. And yet I'm fully in it. I'm fully on fire to walk in the lane that I've chosen.
Claudia, you're one of the biggest advocates for inclusion. Your entire career has been about inclusion, all of your work with the She Summit and helping so many companies, corporations with their DEI and inclusion programs. So I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I don't think that you have to be one or the other, that you can't be, a Christian and speak for your faith. In fact, I think that they're very complementary. I think that Jesus was the ultimate includer.
Yeah, I know. And I'm getting these DMs. I'm getting DMs from certain people that are showing me the other side. And I've also seen a lot of ugly posts, a lot of ugly comments on sharing my mourning of Charlie Kirk on social. And maybe that's also where this feeling of being in the middle. And what I'm hoping is, what I'm trying to do is share my experience and my journey in it. And I think that is ultimately too, when we think about what unconscious bias means, we're all made up of differences. And so whatever your childhood upbringing was, the content and information and values that your parents preached or shared and conditioned you in, or it is trauma that's happened or experiences that have happened to you based on your difference or diversity, whether or not it is your epigenetics, or your biology wise, we're all neurodiverse and wired differently. And we all come from differences. And that is the one commonality of everybody. And yet, because of those differences and also high levels of sensitivity, because of trauma and those differences, we can react and get triggered and get angry and be devastated or blown away. Or you can see me make a comment about Charlie and my sadness, or a quote that he said that I'm promoting, and all of a sudden immediately go to a place of judgment or assumption. And I think that it's interesting because we're at a time too where my DE&I work was all about getting conscious of, again, slowing to react and quicker to reflect. How do we reflect first instead of react first, and recognize, oh, I know that this is what my reaction is or my feeling is, but where does this person come from and what's their journey to that point? And ultimately, we all have blind spots and we all have unconscious bias that we're not even aware of. And the whole point of unconscious bias training during the DE&I years was to get aware of that. And yet that same community, we need to have that empathy and that leading with curiosity for the other side. And even like, what does other side even mean? But yeah, it's amazing because like when you and I talk about this topic, you're like, Claudia, this is so natural. It's all you and it's whole self. And yet I'm like, no, Shannon, it's really uncomfortable for all these different reasons. And because my life is so rooted in the public. And the community members I'm thinking about in our inner circle community, to my besties over the years that are in New York and LA and just around the country, and super fans of mine. And I am thinking, maybe I'm so trained from an inclusionary perspective, how will this come across to others? Am I being sensitive to others? And so maybe that keeps me sort of in this raw, vulnerable space.
That makes sense. And your point is such a good one, that it's those sensitivities and the trauma that any individual may have experienced, and not all Christians maybe are inclusive, just because we are. And so when there is that connection that is made from perhaps others, that then there could be that generalization that's happening.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting too, because DE&I, diversity, equity, inclusion work was so big in, I know I started She Summit in 2012, and that's when it was a women's conference. And Lean In came out in 2013 with Sheryl Sandberg's book, and Beyonce did this whole concert sign that said, "The future is female." Like we were just full on. There was Malala, who got shot and wanted an education and became an international symbol for like girls' education and girl empowerment and global gender equality. And the Me Too movement happened. I was full on in every one of those pieces. I was full on, like that content was on my She Summit stage. And it's interesting, when George Floyd happened and Black Lives Matter was then the core, then the next sort of dimension of diversity that was everywhere. And how now, in a way, it is, I don't know, I'm thinking out loud. Is it Christianity? Is it politics? I know it's all political, but is politics the next dimension of diversity, or religion the next dimension of diversity? Right? Which were the taboo or the topics you don't really you don't get political in organizations. You don't get there's space for celebrating various faiths. Right. But you don't really talk religion. You don't start sharing your religion, right, in workplace environments. And so I think it's just a really interesting time where the intersectionality of who I am and everything that makes up me, and how everything that I did in that diversity, equity, inclusion space was powered by my relationship becoming a Christian and becoming a follower of Christ and Jesus. And yet that topic, I'm being told right now, is so MAGA. And it's just a really interesting time. And I think this conversation, everybody's got different algorithms, but I get the feeds of the revival folks, and more, all the revival, the God, the Jesus, all of that. And then I'm also seeing, the other side, which I guess the other side means Charlie Kirk was a racist, like all the sexist, all the different things. And yet it's just so ironic. And yet I'm like, wait, Like I'm a part of all of these worlds.
It's interesting because I think what Charlie would say, and I heard on his podcast, was that it all started with faith, and then faith informs culture, and then culture informs politics, and how sort of trickles down.
Yeah. And that's really what it is I think the revival that we're seeing, it wasn't about the politics. The revival we're seeing was about the faith. And there are, you know, I mean, millions, if not, I mean, there's over 2 billion Christians in the world. So, I mean, at least millions, right? We're seeing on the streets and in church and praising worship music. And yeah, we're just seeing that everywhere right now. There's definitely, the revival has always been there, and it's been happening. It's just public now. It's public. And like his assassination officially made it public. Like, yeah, we're also going to be loud and proud. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in culture now. What happens in culture now with this feeling of, oh, are those more MAGA people, or are those more, just folks that are anti-abortion, and, you know, all these political things that we associate with faith and with being a Christian.
It's always been, I think, like a head scratcher for me, because I think, I guess, like socially, I feel like the social inclusiveness and aspects
Of faith.
of, I guess, I don't know. I think how politics does incorporate both. But like, should it?
Yeah. I mean, abortion is a great example, though, of that, right? Where it's like completely intertwined. And yeah, I mean, you know, traditional Christians are not going to believe that, yeah, that's killing a life. And that's probably, if not the most heated topic. So yeah, it's also intertwined and interconnected. And I think it's almost a time where, can you lead? Like when I think about Jesus, and I think about, if you've watched the Chosen series, and which is such a great, sort of takes you back to like really giving you an amazing visual cinematic storytelling of being in those times when Jesus came and he was building his discipleship of the 12. And I just think about him with the handicapped person, or the bleeding woman, or just all the different diverse, broken, scarred, canceled, insignificant people who, yeah, had shame around not being clean, or not being right, and how he had love for them, had love for everybody, and healed them, and loved them just as much as he loved anybody. And so when I think about Bible is like an original book of inclusion and love for all. And the Bible is a book of also, you know, loving you so much and giving you so much peace inside that you can just go out there and be courageous, and you can go out there and be bold to actually create the next, like what culture can be today or tomorrow. And that's the thing too, like every decade, every generation, every period has a new set of problems. It has a new set of what's political. It has a new set of evil, a new set of innovation that's needed, a new set of natural disasters and mental illness, and so every new culture and time has a new mess that has to be solved, has new problems that have to be solved. And so it is, I see the Bible as a book of, yeah, I call you to listen for my will and my will for your life, which is often a call to courage and not safety. But he gives you safety in your call to courage through the word and through the verses.
That's beautiful.
I don't know how we went from like pro-life to like abortion control to then The Chosen and Welcome to My Brain. Welcome. We call this the Claudia tornado. We actually, for our listeners, Shannon and I used to have this WhatsApp channel that was called CC Tornado. It's just this dump. And shout out to Josh, who edits actually at this point, I'm like, he minimizes edits, but because I think audiences are just used to my tangents, how we go from here to here to here to here. I do truly believe, though, you and I talked about ADHD because I was listening to Mel Robbins talk about ADHD and discovering that in her mid-40s and how that was life-changing. And then I went on this research to discover whether or not I have ADHD, which I'm still convinced I have aspects of it.
I think it's just the CC genius, the artist within.
Yeah, and I think
that's your gift.
Artist, God, I love art so much, and I always make the comparison that we're all works of art. Like life is really this journey of creation, like creating your life, and creating what is in your soul and because we're not really in control of our life. Like God, to me, God creates, God is in control of our life. And we're here to receive and experience and take in life to then create and put art into our world. And that art could be, doing marketing, for a company that you feel like is doing important things in the world, or, and that art could be writing, and the art could be for you, or it could just be literally how you show up as a parent in a season of life that calls you. Art can be so many different things. It doesn't have to be entrepreneurship. It doesn't have to be an actual physical piece of art or writing music or doing something that's technically artistic. But I think everything that we do can be an artistic process or is an artistic process. And that in the act of doing so, we become works of art. And that really the journey of life is to, at the end of our life, and just say, wow, like I have, like what a piece of art my life was. And yeah, and it's so rooted from the soul and passion. And I think that that's the other thing that we're really missing these days. I can't tell you the number of people that I meet that see a post of mine or want to have a coffee or talk with me or do a breakthrough call with me. And they feel like they're ready for the next thing, or they're ready. Their soul is calling them and the soul wants more. And often these are more of my empty nesters, or these are more of the folks that are in their probably entering like later 40s or 50s who have had a life where they've been doing the same thing for so long. And now their soul is like, I've been neglected and I'm ready. And yeah, I don't think culture supports that. I don't think culture doesn't make it feel safe.
It's that programming. It's, just like the programming of you don't talk about money, politics, and religion, but then, you're here talking about how that courage to speak about your faith is coming through. So how does someone work through their inner programming or their parental programming or cultural programming, whatever programming it was that said, stay safe, if it's safety,
I think it's just
physical safety, emotional safety, cyber safety,
I think it's just an
versus
incredible point in your life to just, I call it the vortex. You wake up every day and you're doing your day-to-day life. And I'm in a season where we're back to school, or you're coaching softball, or I'm in a season where XYZ, and you're just in your day-to-day life. And I want to say, a lot of people use the words, I'm at soccer practice, or like surviving. I'm just surviving the week. And it's almost, when you look at people in the day-to-day, like everybody's just like, trying to make sure their hair is not a mess. And so the first thing they can say is probably self-deprecating. And yet, how do we shift that? That's one of the reasons why I really leaned into after I shut down She Summit in 2020, the physical conferences, I started taking the content online, and I had cohorts of major companies and teams of women and men, mostly women. I was hearing what they were going through, and I was like, wow, people are in massive burnout, and I need to support them in that. But I think that the first thing to do is to treat it like strategy. So if you're an interior designer, if you're a consultant, if you're a medical person, if you're in real estate, right? When you get a new customer or a prospect, the first thing you do is you assess their current situation. You're like, okay, let me understand the current paradigm. Let me understand the current information. And it's a discovery process. So I think that we need to treat ourselves like our own customers. And I try to even do this sometimes every week, on Sundays, or maybe my more spirit, or like the moment I take, like, okay, I'm going to take an hour of rest right now, and I'm feeling anxious. And I'm like, I got to plug back into my outside in lens. I got to start looking at my life from, like, as if I'm coaching myself, as if I'm my own healthy parent, or I will listen to God, like what God would say to me. And usually it is, first, Claudia, this is the current lay of the land. This is what you're in right now. Generally speaking, in the last month, in the last week, in the last few months, whatever it is, this is what's been on autopilot. You're in this season. And then, and the quality of experience, I'm always getting my community to think about, like, when it comes to goals, stop thinking about what you want to achieve, and zone in on the quality of experience that you want. And the quality, and really what we want is, we want more joy. We want more inner peace. We want more rest. We want more passion. We want more excitement. We want more love. And all of that, by the way, is dopamine, is serotonin, oxytocin. Like, we need good chemicals, right? That we need our brain releasing good chemicals. And so, so when we feel like we're under, or we want to assess, am I making the right decision? It's like, turn yourself into your own client or your own child, and assess the situation, and then advise, like, as if you were, again, the consultant and the healthy parent, which then turns the pressure into compassion. Because we just pressure ourselves, we just shoulds ourselves and what ifs ourselves to death, And so all of that is cortisol. All of that is negative. All of that is disease. All of that is disease. It's why women have 80% of autoimmune diagnoses today. And it's why we have the greatest generation of, like, mental health issues. And you know how I feel about, by the way, mental health, and just the words like burnout. It's just too broad. that we almost ignore it. It's just, yeah, whatever, but it's real.
I would love to talk about that next time. The just like the circle or the loop of the healthy self-parenting that leads more to the joy and the rest and all of those good things and how it ties together.
Definitely. Well, let's I feel like we've been on for approaching 40 minutes or 30 minutes. Let's actually close up with Sabbath, and because you brought it up prior to the call, and I thought that was something great to talk about, and because it is Friday. And by the way, even though I grew up with so many Jewish friends, I never really fully, and even as a Christian for the last 15 years, I never really, like, I would think of Sundays as, like, Sundays for Christians is your Sabbath, or Sunday is the day of rest and the day of reflection, but never really looked into what it meant for the Jewish culture. But I'm just looking at a definition here in my GPT, in my Claudia bot, and it says it is, in biblical sense, it means a set apart day of rest and worship. It comes from the Hebrew word Shabbat. Oh, and actually, you know what? Shabbat maybe is the word. Shabbat is the word that I never thought about. I'm getting Shabbat and Sabbath confused. Sorry. So Shabbat is the term from the Jewish community that I never really got into the definition of. And meaning to seize and to stop. And by the way, at the beginning of the call, were you talking about Shabbat or Sabbath?
Shabbat. So originally I had challenged Claudia to take a pause from drinking with me. And instead we were talking about perhaps doing a like observing a Shabbat like Charlie did. So helping to get that rest, that peace. And when there are so many external things that come in from the world, taking a rest, taking a day to like focus on the inner, on the family, on pouring into the things, you know, that matter.
I love it. And so this is what I said to Shannon. I said, well, I can't give up drinking right now because it just doesn't seem possible in this moment. But my commitment was 2 episodes, 2 live streams, like, because it's also just fasting. For me, it's fasting spontaneity and fasting, because I'm such a spontaneous person. I don't love structure. And so I said, what I'll fast is spontaneity and what I'll work on is discipline. And because really it's an act of discipline at the end of the day. And my discipline was to get on live stream with you twice a week and get our podcast rebooted. Being the artist, the Jackson Pollock in my, painting in my brain. And I want to add here, Shabbat here, it literally means to seize and to rest. In Judaism, refers to the 7th day of the week from Friday evening to Saturday evening. And key aspects of Shabbat in Jewish life is lighting candles and blessing the day at sunset Friday, sharing festive meals with family and friends, refraining from regular work or commerce, attending synagogue, studying the Torah. And yeah, so it is holy gift of renewal, joy, connection with God, and community. And I think, gosh, that is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. And imagine if I blame sports travel that might get in the way of it, but how beautiful is that? So as we close up, your Shabbat, your commitment is no drinking until when?
I think it's one of those things where if you put a date on it, so I'm just going like day by day and focusing on that. Because I think if I say, like, I'm never drinking again, like, that's too big of a elephant to chew. But I'm just like,
I think that's
what
smart.
can I do that's positive or relaxing or restorative instead?
I love it. All the doggies are like, okay, it's time to get off.
Yes.
Thank you for this conversation, my love, and I'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Claudia.
Happy Friday. Enjoy your Shabbat.
Thank you. You too. Bye.